What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson here. I want to kick off this Wednesday show talking about a guy I haven't really brought up in Bulls Latest in a while, and that's Jonathan Kuminga, as he still is in that contract stalemate with the Golden State Warriors. I wanted to bring him up because the Bulls have had their eye on Jonathan Kuminga for a while, and this could get even more interesting if Jonathan Kuminga decides to sign that qualifying offer, making him an unrestricted free agent next summer. That could be a huge target for the Bulls when they're going to have money to spend next offseason, and they're looking to go in on another couple of big players to add to the repertoire of the Bulls roster currently. Kuminga entered this summer as a restricted free agent. That standoff is ongoing. It's really continued into this third week of September, which I cannot believe. With the young forward's future in Golden State up in the air, he's been consistently connected to multiple teams as a potential sign and trade target. If you guys remember, I've talked about in a multitude of shows the ability for the Bulls to kind of include a guy like Kobe White, or I would assume in a sign and trade for Kuminga. It'll be interesting to see what happens, and this includes the Bulls with those, with that group of teams. As the Bulls dealt with their own elongated negotiations with Josh Giddey, Kuminga's name would come up as a potential pivot. He undoubtedly would fit the Bulls front office's young players with experience mold, which I've kind of pinned that to many times. He'd give the franchise another interesting building block here. I think this player has a lot of potential. I think it could potentially allow him to unlock what he is able to do if he goes to play for another organization where he has a bigger role. And as we sit here today with the Bulls finally re-signing Giddey, that was always the clear priority for the Bulls, and I've talked about that. But the team finally got that done earlier this month, which sure, it felt like it would put the Kuminga buzz to bed, but not so fast here. I think Kuminga is constantly being linked to the Chicago Bulls, and that'll happen until, or if I should say, the Warriors decide to lock him up long term. The Bulls could be an interesting landing spot next offseason for Jonathan, and if he takes the qualifying offer this year, we know Chicago will have a load of money to spend and plenty of open roster spots. Given the guys who are in the final years of their deal, you're going to see some shifting in this Bulls roster, I think, going into next offseason. Not only do they want to take swings on high upside talent, which I've talked about, that's how you jump out of the play-in conversation in the Eastern Conference. You got to take high upside swings, but they have the roster flexibility as well needed to give these players the kind of opportunity they need, and they can give these players the financial, security that they're looking for, I guess. And Kuminga has kind of struggled at times to carve out a consistent role with the Warriors. I think that's kind of the Warriors' hesitation on locking him up for long-term, big-time money there. The Warriors organization remains in a win-now mode. The Bulls tried to land the former lottery pick a few years ago. The Warriors were frequently mentioned as a suitor for Alex Caruso before he ultimately was dealt to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Jonathan Kuminga was in the talks for a deal like that. So the Bulls have really kind of been, tiptoeing around the idea of bringing in Jonathan Kuminga as a big piece of this organization moving forward at still a very young age there. So we'll see what happens. I haven't brought up his name in a while here, but keep an eye on the Warriors situation and what that could mean if he does ink that qualifying offer moving into next season. The Bulls could be a big player on this guy. So kind of diving into a beloved Chicago Bull. In his time here, he was a big fan favorite, and that's Carlos Boozer. He gave out the other day on a podcast a rebuild idea of his own. Only Carlos Boozer would know what it's like to be part of a contending Bulls squad. In that time he was with Chicago, he was that second leading scorer on that 2011 Eastern Conference Finals team, and he played an intricate role to getting them to that mark there. And he does remain a fan favorite from his 4 strong seasons here in Chicago. Recently on SiriusXM Sports, he was asked what would it be, or what would it take if he were the Bulls general manager to rebuild this organization? And his answer and his response certainly did not disappoint. I certainly am on board with it. Quote, he said, I would make a splash and go get somebody that doesn't want to be on their current team. I would want some trade assets for a potential superstar, and then the draft. I would load up on the 2026 draft. The 26 draft is loaded. So I'm on board with everything he said here. I think he has a clear vision, and it's a pretty simple vision of what it's going to take to get this Bulls team back on track. And I think Carlos Boozer, just given his winning pedigree in this city, knows what it takes. And the Bulls should be listening to former players such as Carlos Boozer on what the blueprint forward should be. So let me know what you guys think in terms of what Carlos Boozer's ideas were. Are you on board with that? I think it's pretty clear cut. I think it's very logical. He's a smart basketball mind, and I think the Bulls have a pretty clear path forward to contention again. So we'll see what happens with Carlos Boozer's ideas and if that molds into anything significant here. I kind of wanted to, speaking of this next season in the very near future, I know we talked about the Bulls win total a long while ago, sitting at 32.5. I wanted to take a dive inside the numbers and what the betting data is telling us, what the betting market says about the Chicago Bulls. Looking at specifically DraftKings Sportsbook, the Bulls are minus 205 to win 30-plus regular season games. Not surprising here with their win total coming at 32.5. They have that mark slightly over 30-plus wins. Minus 205 is decent juice, though, given that the Bulls are kind of up in flux right now. But considering Ayo Dosunmu and Nikola Vucevic are going to be back with this team, I see the Bulls certainly hitting that 30-plus regular season wins mark most definitely. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and this is where I think this angle kind of speaks loudly about Chicago. The Bulls are plus 155 to win 35-plus regular season games. Ultimately, a little bit of good juice there on 35-plus wins. I think the Bulls have the ability to soar over this number. If I'm being honest here, I think if these pieces stick around in a weaker, injury-prone Eastern Conference this year, I think the Bulls could certainly hit that mark. Now, the plus 475 is where it gets super interesting here, and I think to win 40-plus regular season games, the Bulls have done that in, 3 straight years? They've been in the play-in tournament with ultimately the same record the last couple of years here. Who says this team can't win 40-plus games again? I think plus 475 is a crazy number given what the Bulls have done in recent memory here with a lot of the same pieces. So I think if you're a betting man or woman, you can take a shot at this plus 475 to win 40-plus regular season games here. I think the Bulls have a decent shot to hit this number, especially if all these pieces are still in place until February. I think the Bulls could stack up some wins there. So we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be interesting because this core and this roster, at least up until that point in February, are going to be together. There's a lot of excitement to be had and a lot of talent on this team. And I think something to be said about the increased role of Modest Buzelis going into this season. And adding a guy like Noah Sangay, there's a lot of young talent on this team to stick in a lot of games and potentially hit that mark and go 500 or around 500 again this upcoming season. So we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think of those betting numbers. What do you expect from the Bulls from a statistical standpoint when it comes to wins, and how do you expect them to do it? I'd be interested to know what Bulls fans think and what you guys are anticipating out there. I wanted to wrap up today's show with just some more NBA news, keep you guys in the know around the league. It is an interesting start to the NBA news cycle here today. There is a new basketball league based in Europe that the NBA and FIBA are working together to launch that could begin play in the 2027 or 28 season there. That is super interesting. No timeline has been finalized here, but when you look at the NBA as a whole and the landscape of it, about 1 in every 6 NBA players is European. So this makes a lot of sense defense. I think this would be an exciting league that could jumpstart itself here, and it could allow for a lot of competitive basketball outside of the association. So we'll see what happens with that. I think that could be an exciting opportunity for growth and to expand our game. So we'll see what happens with that. Some other news here. Free agent center Bismack Biyombo has signed a one-year deal to return to the San Antonio Spurs. He will, of course, play as a reserve behind both Victor Wembanyama and Luke Kornet there. Luke Kornet is a very solid signing for the Spurs organization, playing behind the one and only Victor Wembanyama there, the global superstar. So we'll see what that Spurs team looks like. I anticipate them to be a very exciting team in a loaded Western Conference. I think Bismack Biyombo has done his service as a solid backup for years in this league. Signing that one-year deal, a decent opportunity for him to add to that Spurs roster. So overall, I want to thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Bulls Latest today. Give me your thoughts on the show today. Give me your thoughts on what Carlos Boozer said and what those betting numbers say about the Chicago Bulls. What do you guys anticipate? I mean, we are right around the corner from the preseason kicking off, and then just around the corner, a few weeks away from the start of the NBA regular season, and the Chicago Bulls are finally going to be playing basketball again. I can't wait. So anyway, thanks for joining me today, guys, and we will see you guys tomorrow.